Monsieur
Hey,
Peter.
welcome everybody to Spin Legal. It is October 14th, 2025. This is episode 87 with Angela and myself. And just to remind everybody, we are partners at Invictus Legal LLP. And today's topic is employment rights when you're pregnant. So, gentlemen, open your ears.
Yeah, just in case the gentlemen do become pregnant at some point, this is something that they need to pay attention to.
Yeah. All right. So if you need to contact us at Invictus Legal, you can do so at 905-688-5598. Email Angela via angela@weareinvictus.legal or myself via peter@weareinvictus.legal. And the website is weareinvictus.legal. There you go. So today's topic is employment rights when you're pregnant. As I say, gentlemen, pay attention.
Okay.
Pay
There's
attention.
two different types of leaves when someone is pregnant. One is called pregnancy leave and the other is called parental leave. They're not one and the same thing. They're two different things.
And we'll get to them.
Yeah, and we'll get to them so that people know the difference, and also men have a right to parental leave as well.
Yeah.
Right? And women, of course, will have the pregnancy leave. And
Okay.
when men become pregnant, then I guess they can have that too.
Well, yeah, but you see, come back, Mr. Schwarzenegger. All is forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yeah. And Rabbit Test.
Pardon me?
There was a movie called Rabbit Test.
Yeah.
About men being pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Let's go in there. Rush in where you need to. When to notify your employer that you're pregnant. And that could surely be an awkward thing, because if a woman's got a history of terminations, stillbirths, etc., how do you notify? Because you could be notifying and then, yeah, I told you last week I'm pregnant. No, I'm not.
Ooh, well, I'll get into that too, about things if you have a miscarriage or stillbirth. You still have some rights.
Or terminations that come to that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's different things that happen when people do it. First of all, you need to work in a regular workplace, not self-employment, but you need to work in in employment standards workplace, and you would have to be employed at least 15 days. You have to be employed at least 13 weeks before the baby is expected to be born.
At least 13 weeks before the baby is expected to be born. So if you, sorry, hang on.
So say, for instance, you're at work and then you discover you're pregnant. You have to be working at least 13 weeks.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So if you suddenly decide you're 13, you suddenly find that you're 28 weeks pregnant or something, but it's actually not about when you discover the pregnancy. It's about when you discover how long you've been working.
How long you've been working, as opposed to when you discover you're pregnant. You can discover you're pregnant on the 13th week. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
So, but you do need to tell the employer at least 2 weeks before you intend to take your pregnancy leave. And the maximum pregnancy leave you could take is 17 weeks.
Maximum pregnancy leave you can take is 17 weeks. Okay.
So I give the employer 2 weeks, and then at the notice period is 17 weeks prior to my stated due date. Okay. If you're still pregnant at 17 weeks, you can't be called back to work. They'll just let you go and have your baby.
Yeah. So basically, if your doctor says that, hey, you're going to be giving birth on the 30th of November, for example, and it's relatively close to us now, then then given that you've already given the appropriate amount of time, and that's when your 17th week, let's say, ends on the first week in December, and you're still not giving birth,
Yep.
then
And then you could probably
yeah,
say like maybe if and then what you do is then you just say, okay, that's fine. You just go ahead and you're probably going to have your baby soon anyways. And
yeah.
then by the time you have your baby, then you're ready to go in and ask for parental leave.
So you're at that point, you're going to notify.
Yeah, at that point you notify that you're going to be taking parental leave.
Yeah, but
The other
again,
way too is if something happens, you've given you 2 weeks, but then something happens to you. Say if you have some high risk pregnancy issues where you cannot work and you have to be put in the hospital.
yeah.
You can actually take your pregnancy leave earlier with a medical note from your doctor and ask to be put on medical leave earlier for pregnancy.
Well,
So you can just go to the hospital, have your doctor write, and you could let your employer know.
yeah. Okay, so I was going to come across that. So we're talking about there's some special conditions, things like stillbirths, birth terminations, etc.,
Yeah,
which might interrupt the pregnancy, terminate the pregnancy, and
yeah, that does more than
unnaturally.
interrupt. Yeah,
Sorry, a wrong choice of words there on my
yeah,
part. Sorry, I didn't mean to offend. Just
yeah,
was the wrong choice of words.
yeah,
So terminations and stillbirths, etc. Whatever the cause of them, we're not going there, right?
yeah.
These could happen, and they could affect any lady at any time, realistically,
Mhm.
during the pregnancy. So there's some situations there, but so you could end up with the term stillbirth or something well before you've given your 17 weeks notice,
Yep, yep.
right?
You can have that during that period of time. Then what happens is your pregnancy leave ends at the date that is the latter of 17 weeks after the leave began or 12 weeks after the stillbirth.
Okay. So
Okay.
there are clear, distinct rules about that
Yeah.
one.
And then and as for, it's the same as a miscarriage, a 17 weeks after the leave began or 12 weeks after the miscarriage.
Okay. Are there any accommodations that must be given in these circumstances?
Absolutely. If you're pregnant, and then say if your labor is intensive, maybe there could be more relaxed labor duties before you go on to leave.
And one thought occurred to me, and I only asked this question because I do know it happened to a friend of mine. A doctor orders a woman into bed rest, for example. It happened to a friend of mine's wife. She
Mhm.
was basically told, "You're staying in bed." And basically, what had happened is she'd had a number of stillbirths beforehand, and they basically wanted to reduce the risk.
Yeah, I had to stay in bed, but for a different reason. I had preeclampsia before my son was born. So I had to go to the hospital and had to be tested every day for protein in the urine.
But
And I was there
any
for 2 weeks.
But any condition like that is suddenly going to change your situation at work, isn't it?
Yep, exactly. You'd let them know that now I'm on bed rest. And say, for instance, you didn't take your pregnancy leave or you didn't let your employer know and you didn't intend to let them know until later on in your pregnancy.
Yeah, and
Some
this
women just like to go and take mostly their parental leave. Okay, but they
again,
have the option. Okay, but basically basically the pregnancy leave they give you all the way up until 17 weeks before the baby's born. So that gives you plenty of time to do the preparations and do all the prenatal classes and everything you need. Okay, and then that sort of thing. And then for someone like myself, I ended up in the hospital. I was told to go right to the hospital, do not even pass go by my gynecologist. And then I went there, and then I was put into bed rest for 2 weeks. And then they said, okay, everything's fine. To go home, my water broke. So then I went back, and they wanted to check me overnight just to make sure there wasn't anything that can cause an infection. And then my son was born. Of
yeah.
course, he was born at 36 weeks, I think.
Okay, so that's a very good question because in fact there are because 36 weeks, that's I guess the 17, that's probably about the time when you'd be saying you 30 to 36, you got 45 weeks on a normal pregnancy.
40,
Yeah?
40.
40, okay.
Because otherwise, you're going to get towards elephant territory.
Okay, so typically you'd be giving your you'd be taking your leave, let's say at 25.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Because usually like to have about 4 months or 4.5 months
Yeah.
before you actually give birth. Okay, and women can have that without sacrificing any of their parental leave.
Yeah. Okay, so and I put them down slightly different, and I apologize for that. Maternity and paternity leave, right? So
Yeah.
the paternity leave is obviously the one that the man will get.
Yeah, and that's usually after. It's after the baby's born.
And maternity leave is the leave that is given that 17 weeks prior to.
Yeah, yeah, and then there's parental leave. A parental leave is a proper name for it. Both men and women are eligible for it. Sometimes what you can do is you can share or split in half, and both spouses can stay home with the baby, or one spouse can stay home and then the other can follow with the baby. It depends on what the preference is between them in terms of taking a leave and collecting EI.
Okay.
Because they can collect EI on parental leave for up to 60, 61 or 63 weeks, depending.
Okay, so parental leave means that, okay, so my wife's having a baby now and I decide I'm going to take parental leave. Do I get rights to be, time off with pay?
Yep, yep. You can apply for unemployment insurance for parental leave. See, this was not given for a long time until some people sued, and then the men were given equal rights in parental leave.
Okay, but unemployment insurance at normal EI rates.
Normally on unemployment insurance. So either party would get their unemployment insurance through their respective jobs.
Do both get?
You can get both. Both can be off at the same time, but they would have to apply for it together because it's the same baby. You can apply for it together.
Well,
Actually, they've actually put a situation where one of them, there was a case one time where a woman was born with quadruplets, and they extended the parental leave, and they actually went to the unemployment board and they had an extension of the parental leave, so both the man and the woman were able to stay for the full time. And
that's quite a family to bring up.
yep, exactly. Like if you're bringing up quintuplets, like there's only two breasts.
That's all right. That's all right. I'm juggling. Right?
Yeah. And maybe the man could take the turn.
Juggling the babies.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah. But all the men can help change diapers, help them stimulate the baby and raise the baby, spend time with them, that sort of thing. It's very important for a man to bond with the child as well.
Yeah. Okay. So so the parental leave basically is after the event.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this goes on until 60, 61 or 63 weeks, depending on.
Do you have to give notice on that?
No, you just let them know that you're going to be moving towards parental leave, and then you apply for EI benefits, and then it goes. You cannot go back to work right after you start your pregnancy leave, because then you're not allowed to. Like you can't. Oh, I'm going back to work 2 weeks before my baby's born. You lose your right. You can't go back and say, okay, I'm going back to parental leave. You can't do that. Okay.
Okay. One of the
Although
things
you have two jobs, you can do that only for one job, but still do the other job. You can still do that on parental leave.
Okay, so one of the things you said about the very beginning of the program, and many of the rights we're discussing here today relate purely and simply to people who are in women who are in normal employment type situations.
Yeah,
men as well.
There are some options for self-employed, but they have to pay into it, and they have to put it into a fund. And one of them is sick leave, and the other is parental maternity leave. Okay? But to do that, most self-employed don't do that.
Okay. Yeah, but as a self-employed person, there's always the possibility you can plan around when you take your time off.
Yeah, exactly. You can put somebody else in charge and take a few weeks. Hey, you're probably not going to get all of that. Yeah,
And the interesting thing is about that is that this has all changed since when I was young anyway. So the whole everything around that was all changed because you literally had about I think about 3 months worth, about 12 weeks worth of maternity leave, and which started more or less from about a month prior, and
yeah,
you know and it literally depended upon when you did it and as to when you took time off.
yeah. And then you apply to unemployment insurance, and then unemployment insurance pays you in accordance to how much you have in insurable earnings.
Okay.
Okay? And that
And
unemployment insurance is one of the programs that they do provide for, and they're not doing too much. And if you're giving that at certain point of time, like you can serve for up to 61 or 63 weeks, depending on your situation,
okay.
right? Or parental leave. Complications during pregnancy, it does happen. As I said, people can take it early, and they can say to the employer, "Okay, I have to take my pregnancy leave early because I cannot work." Get your doctor to write a letter, send it there, get the letter written, send it to the unemployment office so that you'll be able to do it. So even if it gives you a little bit lengthy, more of a pregnancy leave, okay, but you have that doctor's letter, so that helps you.
Yeah.
Even
And
in my case, I had to have my baby induced so that he came out early anyway.
okay. And what about complications after pregnancy? Are there any legal protection for that?
Um, if the baby's still around and so
Yeah.
forth, and you got your parental leave, you have that period of time. Hey, there's also later on after the 63 weeks, later on there's caregiver leave too if you end up with a child who has a severe disability or you need to care for somebody. Hey, but that's a very different picture than we're talking about today.
Okay. Okay. Now it's good to see that there are supports available for that
Yeah,
sort of.
these are things that are passed through what they call protected leaves under the Employment Standards Act. Okay, basically, and also they cannot fire you while you're on a protected leave. Like your boss cannot just say, this one's on pregnancy leave, fired. Okay, they can't do that.
Okay, that's an interesting thing because what we just talked about is that okay, so you're going off on your pregnancy leave now, but you have to now collect it from EI. So I as your employer, I'm no longer paying you. I've washed my hands of
Mhm.
you.
The
It's
only thing you might have to cover is, say, if you get benefits from your employer,
yeah,
like if you get dental health coverage,
yeah,
that
yeah,
things like that, you would have to cover your portion continuously while you're on leave,
okay.
okay? Or else
And
you don't get them.
okay, so when you talked about the job being secured.
Hmm.
But yet there have been many, many instances. We've had a few people in the office who've come in because when they came back and they said, "Hey, I'm back from maternity leave," and they're saying, "Bye bye, no jobby."
Hmm. And they have to give you your job back, your old job. And if during the time that you're on leave, the pay goes up, you come back, your pay goes up.
Okay,
Okay.
so
If
so
your job disappeared for whatever reason, through no fault of your own or their fault, is that they have to give you a comparable job at the same rate of pay you had before you went on leave, at
okay,
least.
okay,
Okay,
all
they
right.
can't just give you a job and say, "Oh, now start sweeping the floors now," even though you were vice president of the company. They can't do that.
Vice president of vices, and now you're sweeping the floor. That's a vice.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So there's a lot of complicated things there in
Yeah.
relation to pregnancy in the workplace. Um,
And there's human
Now,
rights cases that could happen, like say if you return from maternity leave and then they have you work a day and then you're gone. Things like that can also be subject to wrongful termination or human rights cases.
yeah. So I was thinking actually, there's all many of cases whereby potential wrongful termination can occur.
Yeah.
That
Lawyers
situation
have to be
whereby,
super careful. They
yeah,
have to be super careful. Like you have a female employee who comes in and then she's there. Like a lot of times in the good old days, they used to not hire women because women get pregnant. They used to
mm,
not hire women. I said nonsense because not all women will get pregnant,
yeah,
right? But
absolutely.
now women, if they choose to be pregnant, then they give provisions for that, and they have a right to those provisions. So if you're an employer and you're watching this, hey, and you have a female employer approach you and then give you a letter that says, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice because I want to start taking maternity leave. I'm due on such and such a date, approximately 17 weeks, sometimes a little less depending on the choice of the employee. And I want to take that time off so I can enjoy the rest of my
Well,
pregnancy.
I was going to ask in relation to that 17 weeks, let's say that so essentially that means that 17 weeks before you're expected, and I know doctors love to give dates on when your child's expected.
Oh, they told me when my child was expected because they induced them.
Well, actually, that was my big bugbear about my son. They induced him. It would have been much better had he waited for a week or two.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there was just no way, we could have waited because some of the problems that I was having. And with my daughter, we had to induce her too because I had a different type of problem. I was developing gestational diabetes, and they like to induce it, so that cures the diabetes.
Yeah, yeah. And well, that was actually one of the complicating, but that's a medical type situation.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of employment law related issues, let's very briefly talk about those.
Yeah, employment law. Okay, say for instance, like there's different things. You have to give your 2 weeks notice. Employer has to let you go. Employer has to hold a position open for you. And if they cannot hold a position open to you, like say for instance, a company's restructuring and they're shrinking, and that position is going to disappear. When you come back from leave, they have to give you a comparable position.
Okay, but
There's seniorities in place too.
okay, so let's say, for example, I don't know, you're a web designer, right?
Mhm.
And you take your maternity leave, and then 17 weeks later, hey, we're no longer doing web design. We're now an accounting firm, right?
Mhm.
There's not really any comparable to a web designer, is there?
Well,
In
they'd have to find something for you. Hey, you can work with them and try to find something for you. Hey, what you used to do for web design, maybe they can put you into marketing so you can market the accounting firm. Hey, and or you can do different things. There's a lot of different things they can put you and pay you the same thing. If they don't and they have to let you go, then there's severance entitlements.
And then you're into the normal world of severance entitlements.
Yeah, and if you don't have a contract with your employer or the contract doesn't include proper wording with respect to terminating your contract, then that could be pretty risky for the employer. So they do have to be very, very careful if they're going to be making these little bait and switch decisions while a person's off on
Okay.
paternity leave.
Okay. So a person's off on maternity leave, and in the meanwhile, Dave Wheeler's favorite friend, slimy capitalist bastard, takes over the company, and there's no longer any jobs for anybody who isn't currently at work, sitting in their desk at the current moment.
Well, you have to provide or you have to pay for that person to go.
Yeah.
Right? because they can't just say, too bad, you have no job to come back to. Can't do that. Okay? It's that little capitalist guy. He has to start reaching deep in his pockets because the person who has no job to go to will come to a firm like this one or another one that does this type of work, and we'll get some money.
Yeah. Okay. Just so that, just covering that one, because obviously that's got the normal course of, if you
There
think
were
about
a lot of cases actually. For a little while, there was a number of women who are being let go because of pregnancy and
yeah.
pregnancy leave. They either got let go because they were pregnant, or they got let go because they came back from pregnancy leave when there was no job for them.
Hmm.
The Rights Tribunal likes to look at those cases too, and they sort of frown upon employers that do that sort of thing.
Okay. Okay. And the whole thing about this is that there are certain things that once a lady becomes pregnant, there's a certain element there which is about ensuring that, trying to treat them well in order to make sure the pregnancy comes off without a hitch and
Yeah,
everything like that. And
yeah,
that's
to give the woman a right to be able to have her family, to plan her family, and to be safe while she's doing so.
Mhm.
Hey, like in some jobs, you really shouldn't be pregnant and working. Like if you're working with chemicals or other
Well,
types of things. Hey, so it might be
I
best
would
to
say,
take pregnancy leave.
yeah, and I would say if you're doing a strenuous job or something like factory work or something, mm, probably you need to be looking at, there needs to be alternatives. But
Yeah,
there's
there
no,
could be other jobs in a factory, like you can work in an office,
yeah,
answer phones, do some bookkeeping,
is your
different things.
duty to accommodate in those
They
circumstances.
have to. They have to. Hey, and because it's a duty to accommodate on the basis of sex and pregnancy, which is in the Human Rights Code. You have to accommodate in those
Right,
situations.
and for example, if you were like, well, I was talking to a
Again,
fireman.
medical would have to be given, and it would have to show where the accommodations are required. Not
Yeah,
every woman requires pregnancy accommodation. Like some of them can go right into the eighth month or ninth month, and then just say, okay, look, I'm being induced this weekend. Hey, come to my baby shower after. I mean, they could do that, but the thing is, but it gives people that option.
yeah. Well, way back when, I remember there was a lady I worked at, in the place I worked at. She was thin as a rake, and she said, "I'm leaving on Thursday for my maternity leave." And I said, "You're having a baby? You don't look thicker than a twig."
I know I had one person ask me, he says, are you pregnant or you're just fat? Well, that person ended up with a fat lip.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's an interesting. So essentially, your, a lot of your rights as an employee are handled through the advent of EI.
Hmm.
And if you lose your job, it's the same as if you were wrongfully terminated.
Yep, exactly. And then giving notice about the end of parental leave, it does. Um, you don't lose your right if you don't give the right to notice to start your maternity leave, but to give notice about the end of your maternity leave. Say if you want to end your leave at, say, at 35 or 37 weeks or something, and you want to come back to work early. A lot of women do.
Yeah.
Okay? You need to give 4 weeks notice.
Yeah.
Okay? That way, an employer can prepare. They might have put somebody on to replace you or hired a temp agency to replace you during that time. Otherwise, they'll assume that you'll take the full 61 or 63 weeks.
Well, and actually
But they cannot require you, they cannot tell you to get out of the leave and come back early. That has to be the choice of the person.
well, that actually is an interesting thing, because temp agencies often do put in people who are replacements to people on maternity leave.
Hmm.
And whilst there's a common thing out there that you will be you will be temporarily replaced. What if the situation is that you end up with a person who is actually a lot better, the replacement's a lot better than the person, the person in the job?
Sometimes this has happened where the employer, then they just have to find another comparable position for the person returning. Okay, so both people could work.
Yeah.
Okay, or they offer the comparable position to the other person. Okay, I mean, I've seen situations like that where they would have a pregnancy leave, but they have a suspicion that they'll be needing more people after this one returns from the pregnancy leave.
Well,
Okay?
you see, actually, that's an interesting question, because look it up, because I know there are statistics on this one. The percentage of women who return to work after their first pregnancy, second pregnancy, third pregnancy, etc., there are stats about this,
Yeah,
and
it does go down with the number of pregnancies.
yeah, yeah. And with the first pregnancy, it's much more likely that the woman is not going to return from the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She'll go through the relevant pregnancy leave, and then she'll have that parental leave, and then she decides not to come back.
This also applies to adoption too. Okay, for people who are looking to adopt a child, and it could also be used. The parental leave could also be used for adoption.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the same thing, and same as if you have a same-sex partner, and if you and then you choose to adopt it, or maybe your partner has a child and then you want to adopt that baby. Okay, then that becomes same as if you were on a regular situation.
Well, and adoptions are not just same sex, but partnerships. But
Yeah, even
yeah,
regular
yeah,
relationships, maybe you're not able to have a child for
yeah,
whatever
exactly.
reason, then but you want to adopt. And there has been people who have adopted and they can use this.
And that makes a great deal of sense, because obviously at that point, there's a point at which you kind of say, well, hey, on the 1st of January, we're going to be bringing these children and this couple together. But let's be honest about it, and probably the most horrific day in each of those people's relationship is the 1st of January, when they're brought together, because now,
Mm.
because they haven't yet learned to be a family.
Yeah, and also too, the employer cannot ask a lot of probing questions. For example, if they know it's your same-sex partner, they can't be saying, "Well, what about the father? Is he taking a leave too?" And if it's women who are living together, that's also discriminatory.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
can't be asking a lot of probing questions that are really
Well, in fact, actually, your relationship out of work is not really any
not of
business.
their concern.
Yeah.
All they care about is you're going to be you're pregnant, you're going to have a baby, or your partner's pregnant, you're going to have a baby, and you need some time off to enjoy the baby, or
Mm.
you've adopted somebody, and then you need your time off
Well,
to get that
adoptions,
child in your household.
yeah, adoptions. You see, the difficulty with adoptions is you're not adopting a brand new baby, fresh out the womb. Yeah,
There's sometimes older
yeah,
children.
yeah, exactly. And you could be adopting a 12-year-old.
Yeah, exactly, and it's happened. And many of them are adopted. Like sometimes you're foster parents, and then you decide to adopt a child, and
Okay.
that often happens. And then if you have a certain amount of seniority, your seniority continues to build up while you're on pregnancy and parental leave.
Okay. So, how do you ensure that employers don't discriminate against a pregnant person?
Basically, they got to follow the rules. Let you go, then you come back. As long as you're giving proper notices, everything, you come back, and they got to give you your job back, and they also got to give you the right pay. If you got several people who do the same job as you, and during the time you are off, the job went up $1 an hour, you come back, you get $1 an hour too up is an increase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty sensible anyway,
Yeah.
because you wouldn't, because obviously, and what you're talking about there is actually when there's a union type
Mhm.
scenario, right? What if there's a non-union type scenario?
If there's a non-union type scenario, and it's similar. If there's anybody else who's got a raise who does the same job, right, or the position gets a different job. I used to do these different charts where people would move along the gradient scale
Hmm.
about how much they should be paid, depending on how long, based on seniority, based on complexity of the job. And we used to put people into these different positions. Okay? But these jobs continue to grow as maybe a person's away, and then we put them back. And then upon return of work, I've actually had an executive director one time when I was working on these and human resource things, where we had a shared position. This person who was executive director shared a job with another person who also shared the ED position. So they worked so that she was able to look after her kids a little longer.
Okay.
Okay, so there's flexibility allowed after that point, but
Okay.
these flexibility has to be worked out so that because
So,
and at that time I didn't have any children, and when I was doing all of these interesting accommodations, people said this is really surprising that you would be doing that and helping us with that. And I said, well, it just makes common sense, because people have a right to plan their families and live it out.
yeah. But it sounds, generally speaking, as if it's a lot easier in that scenario if you happen to be working for for a government agency or something of that nature.
Yeah. And even in a small agency like this, we would probably have to get somebody to take a temporary agency person to come in to do a particular job if the only person who holds a job is gone, okay, on a leave. So,
Yeah.
and it's very important. Employers have no right. They hire you, and you're a woman. They don't have a right to ask you during your interview, do you have a plan to have children? Okay? Or that sort of thing. Or even if you have children, they can't ask you things like that. Okay?
Uh, but again, if you come in and you've got a belly out here,
I did that. It was 3 days before I gave birth. I did that.
and you come into a job interview, it's clear that you're pregnant at that point, right?
Yep. I said, I'm just going to give my kid and I'll bring him there. And at that time, I was breastfeeding anywhere and everywhere during the time that I gave birth. I,
Hmm.
I don't know what it's like now because I haven't really been in touch with a lot of people like that now. But during my day, it was like that. You can breastfeed anywhere and anywhere else. And people didn't care if you brought your baby to work as long as it wasn't. Kevin, I can take anywhere.
Hmm.
He was very well behaved. He never screamed. He never bothered anybody. People didn't even know he was there.
Hmm.
Okay? But my daughter was a little different, so I had to bring her. We had to have some daycare, and I had to do some accommodations around her.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any further thoughts in relation to pregnancy and the workplace?
Well, this is one of the interesting things. As I said, you continue your seniority. So if they do terminate you, your seniority is based on your seniority at the time that they terminate you, not
Yeah.
at what you were before you took leave.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've gone on for a year and a half and you come back and oh, there's no job for you, sorry. Okay, then that's an extra year and a half that tacked onto your seniority,
Yeah.
and it cannot. And the only exception is, say, if you were on a probationary period, and then when you went on leave for the probation, before the probationary period was up, you come back and you continue on the probationary period.
Okay. So you were 2 months into the job when your probationary period started.
Yep.
Now you've got the last month remaining to go
Yeah. And
left.
then you have to go off on leave, eh? Because maybe an emergency or something, you have to go on leave. And then you have to, then your probationary period continues after that.
But surely you haven't done the required amount of leave at that point. You haven't done the required amount of
Depends.
time.
Some people have longer periods of probation,
Hmm.
right?
Oh, okay.
Depending on the type of job it is. Okay? These things have to be flexible. Like probation is not required. It's not a requirement. If you don't have a probationary period that's written in your employment contract,
Yeah.
it's not a requirement.
Yeah. Okay.
Everybody thinks, okay, 3 months they can just terminate you and then nothing happens. Sometimes a lot can happen. I got a case where a person was paid off $85,000 and he only worked 8 days.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be really, really, really careful when you're terminating people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any further thoughts we can cover?
Um, it's just one of the things too. It's very, very important. It gives women a lot more rights than they used to, because this was one of the things that people were often afraid of what would happen if they're like why they wouldn't hire women because women get pregnant, and then women leave
Hmm.
and so forth for pregnancy and that.
Yeah, but
And then
again,
what they call this mommy track, which is another thing that's wrong because a lot of women want to be partners at law firms, for example, and there's another thing
yeah,
too. Okay?
yeah. And the thing about that is that it's wrong to assume that it's only women that want to take time off to be with their children anyway.
Men do too. Men do too. Like this is why a lot of times that's when they came into the parental leave. It used to be only for women, and then there was a court case that was brought to court, and then they determined that men could take time too.
And
Or if you have two male same-sex spouses and they adopt, okay, and or one of them is his natural child and the other one adopts, yeah, they can have a parental leave there too, because the other one would get to know that child and be able to take time and get to know that child.
yeah,
See, this is very important because it recognizes your family, recognizes the family unit. It recognizes the right to plan for developing your family and growing with your family and being able to continue to work and to plan your career.
I think the point being is that the continue to work stuff is very important, and planning your career, as you put it that way, is an important part of any workplace relationship, and I think that's kind of gotten forgotten over the last recent time.
I think so because this is a lot of things. Like a lot of people say, well, some people say, I just want to work at home so I can raise my kids and so forth. And then they find that they can't handle it anymore. They got to go back to work. I mean,
Yeah,
there's various things, but it all has to be accommodated
yeah,
right, the best that they can because many jobs you can't work at home.
yeah,
Right? Some you can, some you can't. But for the maternity leave period, that's required. Right? Because you are taking that time where you can focus on the child and focus on your pregnancy and looking after yourself and giving birth in the most healthy way possible.
yeah. Okay, so we've just been covering maternity leave and your rights as a pregnant mother um, rights during pregnancy.
Yep.
Yeah. And so if you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so at 905-688-5598. Email Angela via angela@weareinvictus.legal or myself via peter@weareinvictus.legal. And our website is weareinvictus.legal. And as for every show, this is an important
Yep.
announcement.
So what you heard today about pregnancy leave and what can happen and what should not happen if a person takes pregnancy leave or wants to return from pregnancy leave is just information. We're giving out information, and if people have a specific issue with this, please seek legal advice because we can advise you on your own individual issue and the best way to resolve it. And you can come in and talk to Invictus Legal or any other firm that that you might know. Okay? But it's very important that this be dealt with because you have a right to retain your job if you're taking a proper leave or job protected leave of any kind. So anyways, it's best that you seek legal advice if you have this, and not go to Facebook University or come on this thing and think that this. Oh well, I just heard it on Sped Legal that you can't do this. Hey, well, imagine that you present this at the Supreme Court of Canada. That Spin Legal episode number 87 said this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. The judges are really going, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I watch it every week, but it never said that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, anyways, that's one of the things that you just have to say. But, anyways, we welcome anybody who needs to call us for any reason whatsoever. Hey, you want to inquire about things like that, either today's topic or any other topic that we covered, or even if it's a topic that we haven't. If you'd like us to cover a topic, just write us at the email addresses that we had provided, and we'll be very happy to present on it. Okay?
Yeah.
You'll
All
see.
right. We'll see you and have a